Hi everyone, welcome back to TechCravers. Today we're taking a look at what has easily become one of the most hyped handhelds of 2025, or at least since it was first shown off earlier this fall. This is the brand new AYN Odin 3, a device that has already been called the most powerful Android handheld ever made. On paper, the AYN Odin 3 looks almost too good to be true. This isn't just another Android handheld following the same formula we've seen for years. This is the first device in its class powered by Qualcomm's brand new Snapdragon 8 Elite, a mobile chip designed to deliver true flagship performance in a tiny form factor. Pair that with a 6-inch 1080p AMOLED display, a super smooth 120Hz refresh rate, up to 24GB of RAM and 1TB of storage, and a massive 8000 mAh battery, and you start to understand why people are calling this the most powerful Android handheld ever made. But the interesting part isn't just the hardware, it's what this thing unlocks. High-end Android gaming, no problem. Modern emulation like PS2, Wii U and Switch, this chip is finally giving Android the horsepower it needs to take those systems seriously. And maybe the biggest reason why people are buying the Odin 3 right now, AAA PC Gaming through GameHub. Something this device might be perfectly positioned for thanks to its performance ceiling and display. But raw specs doesn't automatically mean a polished experience. And with a brand new chipset like the Snapdragon 8 Elite, questions remain. Are the drivers mature? Is the software ready? And will the Odin 3 actually live up to the hype in real-world use? Well, that's what we are about to find out. So without any further delay, let's jump into it. When it comes to unboxing, this is very much what we've come to expect from AYN, a genuinely solid experience. The Odin 3 arrives in a sturdy, premium-feeling cardboard box with the iconic white Odin silhouette printed on the front, regardless of which color variant you actually ordered. We'll talk more about the different models and color options later on in this video. For now, I should mention that this particular review unit was sent to me directly by AYN. It's the Odin 3 Max equipped with 16GB of RAM and 512GB of internal storage. Huge thanks to AYN for consistently getting units into the hands of reviewers well ahead of the retail release. It makes these deep dive videos possible, but as always, they haven't seen this video before you. They have zero input on what I say, and I haven't been paid a single cent to say anything specific. These impressions are entirely my own. But inside the box, besides the device itself, you get a small quality control certificate confirming the unit was tested before shipping, and quite possibly the thinnest manual in handheld's history. It's basically a pamphlet, but honestly, with Android there's not much you need instructions for. There's also an AYN branded USB-C cable included for charging. Simple, clean, and exactly what you expect in the box. Now, the review unit I'm using here is the ridiculously good looking retro purple edition, and something hit me the moment I unboxed it, something I didn't actually think about beforehand. The back of the device, along with the plastic around the face buttons and the D-pad and the sticks, is fully transparent. But the front shell isn't. It's a solid opaque color. At first I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me was expecting the whole thing to have a classic transparent aesthetic. But the more time I've spent with it, the more I've come to appreciate this design choice. Having a solid front actually makes the device less visually distracting compared to fully transparent handhelds. Your eyes naturally stay focused on the display and the controls instead of the internal components underneath. So in the end, it really feels like a thoughtful decision by AYN, still giving you that nostalgic transparent flair on the back while keeping the front clean, readable and comfortable for longer play sessions. And something else that really surprised me was the overall size of the Odin 3. Without diving into ergonomic measurements or spec sheets beforehand, I was pretty convinced that this thing would be larger. Something closer to the Odin 2 Portal, as you can see here. But in reality I was pleasantly wrong. The Odin 3 is actually smaller and noticeably lighter than its older sibling. The Odin 2 Portal weighs around 430 grams, while the Odin 3 comes in at roughly 390 grams. It doesn't sound like a huge difference on paper, but in the hand it feels significantly more compact and more comfortable to hold for longer sessions. AYN has clearly managed to bump the performance way up without turning the device into a brick. And that's also one of the first things that made me think that okay, they really nailed the form factor this time. AYN also sent over a couple of optional accessories, a screen protector and a soft TPU grip, which together adds about $21 if you choose to bundle them with your device. The TPU case I can easily recommend, especially if you're worried about scratching your brand new premium handheld. It fits snugly and adds just enough protection without making the Odin 3 bulky. The screen protector though, I'm a bit on the fence about. It actually covers the entire front panel of the device and not just the display area, which I'm not sure I personally love. I'll have to decide whether I'm going to install it or not. But it's nice that AYN offers these extras up front if you want a bit of added peace of mind. In terms of hardware, the Odin 3 genuinely feels top-notch. Everything from the full-size Hall sensor joysticks to the surprisingly quiet face buttons and D-pad gives a premium durable vibe. This really feels like a handheld that's built to last. AYN has also made some great improvements to the auxiliary buttons on the front. Start, select, back and home are all soft and quiet now, instead of the loud digital click that earlier generations were known for. It's a small change, but it makes the whole device feel more refined. The added textured grips also feels great in the hand. It's subtle, but honestly I think it makes a noticeable difference during longer play sessions, giving you just a bit more control and confidence. The shoulder buttons are nicely clicky in a good way and they register no matter where you press along the edge. The analog triggers are good size as well, with satisfying amount of travel that feels both responsive and predictable. Overall, the hardware side of the Odin 3 delivers exactly what I hoped for: solid, premium and built with actual long-term usability in mind. Now, if you're considering buying a flagship level handheld like this, price naturally becomes important. So before we go into the real world performance, let's take a look at what the different versions of Odin 3 will cost and what you get. AYN offers Odin 3 in 4 configurations. The base model comes with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage at $329. The Pro bumps that up to 12GB of RAM and 256GB of storage at $399. The Max, the version I'm testing here, features 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage at $449. And now they're also offering an Ultra variant with a full 24GB of RAM and 1TB of storage at $519. And apart from RAM and storage, all models are basically identical under the hood, the same lightning-fast Snapdragon 8 Elite CPU with the Adreno 830 GPU, the same RAM speed and the same fast-charging 8000 mAh battery that powers the whole show. One small difference to note is that the base model uses UFS 3.1 storage, while the Pro, Max and Ultra models use UFS 4.0, meaning faster storage access on the higher end devices, which can matter for load times, multitasking and emulation performance. So the real question is, which configuration should you actually buy? Because sure, the lower price of the base and Pro models is definitely tempting. But for the first time ever with an AYN handheld, I actually think most people should look at the Max or even the Ultra models instead. And the reason for that is simple: RAM. And no, I'm not talking about that kind of ramming that you see in Burnout 3 Takedown. Later in this video we're going to test some RAM-heavy PC titles through GameHub, and many of those games require at least 12GB of RAM just to run properly. Some of the most demanding titles can even bottleneck at that amount. So while the base and Pro models will still be perfectly fine for Android gaming and most emulation that you toss at it, if you're buying an Odin 3 specifically for AAA PC gaming through GameHub, you're going to want that extra RAM headroom. The Max and Ultra models just gives you a smoother and more reliable experience, and in this case I think they're genuinely worth the upgrade. But more on the RAM heavy stuff later, because when it comes to PS2 emulation, I'd honestly say that the Odin 3 has reached a point of perfection. There simply isn't a single PS2 game left that bottlenecks because of the hardware. If you experience even the slightest hiccup in a title, it's down to the emulator and not the Odin 3 itself. And that's actually kind of insane to think about. I used to make entire videos on this channel explaining how to tweak certain settings just to get basic PS2 games or even older systems to run properly on these handhelds. Back then you had to adjust rendering modes, change CPU timings, experience with hardware backends, all that stuff. But the Odin 3, you can literally boot up any PS2 game you want and run it at 4K or 5x native resolution straight out of the box. No tweaking, no hidden settings, no weird hacks, it just works, and it works beautifully. For PlayStation 2 fans, this handheld is basically endgame. Wii U emulation through Cemu is absolutely fantastic on the Odin 3 as well. Lighter, well-optimized titles like Wind Waker HD run at locked 30 FPS even if you drop the performance mode and dial the fan down to lower levels. That's perfect for anyone who wants to save battery on longer trips without sacrificing playability. But it's with Cemu that we run into the first real issue with the Snapdragon Elite chipset. Right now there simply aren't any GPU drivers available for this chip. That means small visual bugs, things like the minimap glitch in Twilight Princess HD, behave exactly the same way they do on Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Except on Gen 2 you can fix those issues by swapping to a different driver package. On your Snapdragon Elite you can't, at least not yet. But here's the important part. Aside from these software-related quirks, the Snapdragon Elite is an absolute dream for Wii U emulation. Games that are notoriously difficult, if not outright impossible, to run smoothly on Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 like Rayman Legends, now run at full speed on the Odin 3. No stutters, no slowdowns, just pure performance. So yes, the driver situation needs to catch up, but once it does, Wii U emulation on this thing might genuinely be unmatched in the Android handheld space. And of course, the same driver limitations also carry over to Switch emulation, but here's where things get interesting. With the latest update to the Eden emulator, which improved stock Qualcomm driver compatibility and overall game support on Snapdragon 8 Elite devices, this is, honestly, the best out-of-the-box Switch emulation experience you can get on an Android handheld right now. No tweaks, no hidden settings, no chasing obscure config files, just install, boot and play. And to give you a sense of how impressive this is, I actually have several Switch titles that run smoother out of the box on the Odin 3 than they do on my Steam Deck. That alone should tell you how far this chipset can be pushed even before proper driver packages arrive. So yes, the Snapdragon Elite desperately needs some official drivers, but even in its current state, Switch emulation on the Odin 3 is shockingly good. But the absolute coolest thing about the Odin 3 and the feature that really blew me away is playing full AAA PC game directly on the device using GameHub Lite. And yes, what you're seeing here is Grand Theft Auto 5 running natively on my Odin 3, no cloud streaming, no Android port, just actual PC gameplay running on an Android handheld. And for those unfamiliar, GameHub Lite is a lightweight compatibility layer that allows certain Windows games to run on ARM-based Android devices. Think of it like a translator that takes the original PC code and makes it playable on hardware like the Snapdragon Elite, without needing a full Windows install. So if you ever wanted to play real PC titles in a handheld form, the Odin 3 is shockingly capable of doing exactly that. GameHub Lite is an app that you install directly on your device, and once it's on your Odin 3, you simply log in with your Steam account. From there you'll see your entire Steam library, and you can also see if your game is marked as fully playable. You also get a game-specific note, recommended settings and compatibility tips, which makes it much easier to know what to expect before you launch anything. And like I mentioned earlier, the more RAM your device has, the better your experience will be with GameHub Lite. And good cooling certainly doesn't hurt either. These PC titles will push your Snapdragon Elite hard and your device will get warm during longer sessions. But as long as you stay within the recommended games and settings, GameHub Lite can turn your Odin 3 into a surprisingly capable little PC gaming machine. But alright, let's wrap this up. After spending real time with the Odin 3, I think it's fair to say that this handheld lands in a pretty unique spot. Easily the most powerful Android handheld ever released, but also one that still has a few early day quirks because of the brand new chipset. And here are the big takeaways. The pros are that it has insane performance thanks to the Snapdragon 8 Elite. It has best-in-class PS2, Wii U and Switch emulation out of the box. AAA PC games playable via GameHub Lite, gorgeous 1080p 120Hz AMOLED display, and premium controls with Hall sensor sticks and quiet buttons. The cons are that the driver situation is still immature, especially for Cemu, which means that we get graphical bugs in a few titles until the drivers improve. It gets warm during GameHub sessions, it's an expensive device even if you opt for the base model, and the screen protector covering the whole front isn't for everyone. But overall, I really like this thing a lot. The Odin 3 feels like the first Android handheld that isn't just more of the same. It pushes boundaries, both in emulation and in what's possible with native PC gaming on ARM devices. And even with the driver situation not fully there yet, this device is already delivering some incredible results. So if you've been waiting for a true next-gen Android handheld, this is absolutely one to keep on your radar. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, drop a comment down below and subscribe to the channel, as it helps more than you think and it lets me doing videos like this. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.